This is a recording of the NMRA-PCR Coast Division Saturday virtual event, March 20th, 2021.
Just a bit on conventions and our return committee. I kind of call this a COVID model because Fred started this here in the COVID, and so has built it. And then when we get done, anything anyone's done that's interesting, feel free to bring it up. Convention update, both the physical conventions are canceled. Both will be virtual events. A lot of effort going on to try to make these much more like a physical convention. And that will be basically first done at the PCR. And then we'll do it at the NMRA convention in the summer. So the idea is to have basically a couple of tracks in the summer of actual clinics, one during the PCR convention. Actually, the clinic agendas are up online on their website. I'll put the website in the chat after we get going. There'll be multiple breakouts, meet the owners, there's birds of a feather. The idea is to try to create in the other track a lot of kind of social opportunities like you see at a convention. The thing that's become clear as we've gone through this, the tech committee has been working on this. When we get to the summer, we're going to need a number of volunteers. So the idea is if you go on the website, there are basically 3 roles other than the clinician or the layout owner in a session this summer. There's essentially an MC who's the person who introduces whoever the clinician is, kind of manages giving them questions, that kind of thing. So they're on screen and are kind of the voice through the session. There's a producer who does kind of what I'll call the back end role and make sure that what's being recorded looks good, gets everything set up. If we have to play a video or something, plays the video. And then there's a moderator role, which is taking questions from the attendees and kind of putting them together or getting attendees upgraded so they can ask questions directly. So there's going to be these different roles. The good news about this is when you're doing one of these, you're actually in the clinic the whole time. So the great news is if you go take one of these roles on to do during some clinics, the National Convention, you'll actually be in the clinic. So I'm kind of looking at this. There's probably going to be 3 teams per day, a morning team, an afternoon team, and an evening team. There are 2 tracks, so that's 6 per day times 5 days. Means we have essentially 30 teams to populate. So if you have any interest, give Hildig or Seth an email. And there's actually going to be a volunteer signups online. There are volunteer signups online at the PCR, but getting involved in this probably is a great opportunity. The other thing is the start of this concept of a return to normal committee. If you haven't seen this, there was a write-up in the last newsletter. We need to begin planning for return to normal. The challenge we have is what we were doing before, which was our normal, was already starting to change before the pandemic and probably has changed even more because of the pandemic. The auctions actually pre-pandemic, because of large items like brass engines going to eBay, had become less than profitable. The auction events require a specific facility that allows a financial transaction activity. So that limited where we could have events to specific events. The software we're using actually was done by a member. I think it's done in Visual Basic and the Microsoft SQL database. It's all out of support. I think it's running on Windows XP, and you can't upgrade the machines because the software won't upgrade. So it's kind of all needs work. So, by the way, if someone is knowledgeable in that and wants to take that on, that would be a wonderful contribution to the coast. The last thing is that because of the Boy Scout bankruptcy, the Boy Scouts are selling their headquarters building in San Leandro. So we effectively have lost access to that, and that was our lower cost option. So as far as auctions, we need to reconsider how we're going to do this, decide how we're going to manage them going forward. And so what the idea was to have a committee to get together folks that really are excited about this and interested. What kind of physical events are we going to have, timing, when do we have auctions, or at every event, is it the same kind of auction? Do we change the auction format? How do we manage clinics and contests and add in layout tours? And then another question is locations. Do we want to distribute locations more now that we've lost 2 of our 4 events a year where we used to have them? Should we be looking at other locations? Then, what are the virtual events we want to have? So I have 2 volunteers so far. Would really appreciate it. I love people who are excited. Send me an email and get involved. And so I'll close just with join the NMRA. And now we'll jump over to Fred. So Fred contacted me and said he'd like to talk about what he's been doing, and said he's a new model railroader. And as I began to see what he was doing, I found it just amazing that he started model railroading because he's found himself isolating because of COVID, and built himself a model railroad. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Fred and let Fred go ahead and tell you a little bit about himself and his modeling.
Good morning. I'm Fred Socher. Very happy to be with you. This is all quite new to me, so let's see. Yeah, I guess am I on now? Yeah.
You're on, and you're full screen for everybody. So okay. we can all see the cutout gears on the wall behind you.
Okay. Yeah. I have a fairly extensive woodworking shop. Woodworking and cabinet making has been my hobby for a number of years. So I have a very extensive woodworking shop in my basement. And I'll go over to the slide presentation here.
Yep. So just click on share in the upper left.
Oh, upper left.
Upper left window. Just click the upper left window. That's your desktop. Yep.
No, that doesn't.
Unless you have a green button in the bottom.
If you click the green button, click the share screen button on the bottom. Green share screen.
There we go.
There.
And then share here.
There you are.
Yep. Now you need to move back to your photos we're seeing the Zoom screen. So just close your browser. Just close that. And now just pull your photos up.
There we are.
There it is.
And then I go
slideshow down at the bottom right. That screen button. There. All good.
Got it. Okay, good. So I've been, I'm used to having a number of students and woodworkers over at my shop, and that all kind of dried up with the pandemic. So about a year ago, I decided I'd like to try model railroading. I've always been interested in miniature models and things, but I've never done a railroad except for my son when he was quite young. So some of the statistics for the railroad are at HO scale. It's all DCC. Era is an early 20th century. The theme is kind of freelance. It's small. It's 7 by 13 feet, so much smaller than what a number of you folks have, I'm sure. It's all built on the tabletop with casters and lift-off doors. The base is 3/4 inch plywood with a plastic cloth over 2-inch insulation board at a maximum grade of 2.5 degrees. And the track height is 40 inches. It's all controlled with a computer, NCE computer NCE controller with a CTI computer program. So all that kind of junk. Okay, so here's the layout. It's all on a moving, the whole thing is on casters. There's, you notice the doors, those all actually, the panels, the lift-off panels, they're all mounted on French cleats, so they just lift off. 4 of them have cabinets behind them. The rest of them are just access to the underside of the train layout. Since I'm 84 years old, I thought I should be not too aggressive in my plans. So I tried to keep a scale that I thought I could work with. So this is what I came up with. This is the computer control. It's on one corner of the stand. and it allows me to operate all of the functions on the train set and write the program for it. In one of the panels has a shallow cabinet behind it, which I put all the electronic modules in for the various functions. Oh, by the way, I since I'm quite new to this, I very much welcome any comments or criticisms or suggestions or anything else that any of you more experienced people might have as you look over my slides here. I did put in a switch. You'll notice about midway on the left-hand side, so I can isolate one section of track for programming the engines. And the rest are just standard modules. The 4 of the panels have cabinets built into them to store various things related to the train set. The tracks, as is typical, I'm sure, are built in blocks, and there's train signals set up that signal when the track ahead has a train on it. So you can see one of the signals about midway in the layout there. I purchased some fare buildings on eBay. I'm a little disappointed. They came with cheap plastic gears and cheap little motors. And I took all that out and replaced them with servo motors, so I can control the speed of each of the carnival events, and I can make them stop and start, letting passengers off and on, so they're not just continually running. They're operating all the time. And as they operate, there's music plays from the merry-go-round. So there's audio. There's 5 different audio programs that play in various things. One for the carnival, and one for the signals, and for the station, and so forth. The area is all illuminated with what do you call them, fiber optics lighting, which I just put in, but I was really disappointed in. You don't get much light output from them. So I'm going to take out all the fiber optics lighting and replace it with LED lighting. So if anybody wants a really good deal on fiber optics lighting, I can give it to you. This is the midway area. And then there's a part of the farm area. And then the main farm buildings. My wife is from Canada, and she was brought up on a farm. And the farm home and barn at her farm we use as prototypes. I scratch built a house and barn and some of the outbuildings based on the design of the buildings in her farm, which was kind of fun. The street lighting here is all LED lighting, and this is in the main town area. I haven't quite got around to starting to age the buildings, and that's what I'm currently just starting to work on. This shows another part of the town, and I'm still looking for a bell for my school building on the far right-hand side there, but I'll find one eventually. These are the kids in the play yard. Most of the buildings use 12-volt grain of wheat lights to illuminate them. And on the buildings, I tried to just illuminate a few of the windows, and so that every window in every building isn't lit up when they're turned on. This is this is a creek behind the town building where there's still some good fishing to be had, and some people gathering in for a family meeting at one of the homes there. Some of the older kids are taking advantage of a pond behind between the train tracks there and enjoying themselves in the summer. This is the station house. This is one of the places where I have an audio track, one of about 5 audio tracks I have. As the train pulls into the station, and it's announced, and its departure is announced. A final resting place for some of the older folks there. And all the traffic is warned of train arrivals by signal lights. And again, there's another audio recording that goes on that rings a bell back and forth to alert the drivers of an oncoming train. Traffic going into town on the main street is cautioned by not only the flashing lights but gates. I had a terrible time finding gates. I finally found some on eBay. A guy had a whole bag of junk stuff he had used, and I bought 2 gates, but and then I hooked servo motors onto the gates to drop them down as the train approached, and then I replaced the little plastic lights on the gates with flashing LED lights, so the gates drop down, and then the LEDs flash back and forth, alerting the drivers of an oncoming train. The passenger cars had no illumination. I added illumination to the passenger cars and put in seating and passengers. I found the illumination was much too bright. This is all LED lighting. It was so bright that you can't even see the passengers in the train. So I took it back and tuned it down by putting a resistor in series with the LEDs. So it's much better than what it shows here. I added some tunnels. The tunnel entrances are all scratch built. These are some good old boys manning the still pot. And then I made a fire pit with LEDs using red and yellow LEDs that flash randomly, creating a simulated fire. In a mountain cabin, my son saw the train layout and immediately decided he wanted to live in the mountain cabin because there's no roads going into it. So it's very isolated. So my only effort making a bridge. And I have a train maintenance area. Right now I'm scratch building a water tower that was going to go in the center of that area. I don't have much of a switching yard. I look at some of the pictures of some of the train layouts and see these huge switching yards. Well, mine's a tiny switching yard, but it could be a maintenance area for the trains. and one more fisherman trying his luck. Then our granddaughter gave us two figures that simulate my wife and myself. She'd taken from photographs, and she found a place that will make figures for you in HO scale from any photograph. So this is my wife and I on our layout. And finally, since we built the train set during the year of 2000 and part of 2001, we call it Coronaville. So that's my train set. I welcome any comments or anything.
Thank you, Fred. That was wonderful. That was like I said, as I said kind of in the chat, when I first saw what Fred had done, I was very impressed. Puts a lot of us and our focus somewhat to shame. So gets us all motivated to get something done.
Motivated, it gets us all embarrassed.
Yeah, but sometimes that's the best motivation.
I have a comment concerning the partial lighting in the buildings that you've done there. Did you sort of put a divider in the structure, or did you put some sort of
in both cases
the light source?
There's a office building, and in the office building I built little enclosures so I could direct the lighting out to certain windows. In some of the houses, I blocked out windows just using black tape over the windows so that only some of the windows were illuminated.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Fred, I've got to say that's an incredible amount of work in a very short time.
Oh, thank you.
You really put the rest of us to shame.
I don't know about that.
I absolutely agree with Earl on that one.
I think, Fred, I'd like to say that one of the main rules we have is that rule number one is it's always your railroad. Rule number two is you got to be having fun while you're doing it. And in 12 months, you have done a ton. So you do not have to be humble about that railroad. That thing is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to question a couple of the illegal activities going on in there, like the still.
Right. Understandably.
Behind that.
Did I see a swimmer underwater in the swimming hole?
Yes, I took, as you probably know, when you pour the water, you have to do it in just 1/8 inch thicknesses. And so I saw that as an opportunity to put some of my swimmers underwater. So as I was building it up, I laid the swimmers in there and then poured water on top of them.
That's great.
It seemed to work.
So there was one comment from Al in the chat that we were talking about bells, and he says bells of all sizes are available on Christmas tree ornaments, and that's right. There's lots of little tiny bells in Christmas. I keep forgetting Christmas time is kind of this double shopping time because you can shop everything for its modeling value.
Oh, it's Christmas time a site, you're saying?
No, you can just, no, I'm saying it's a time when you can shop not just for Christmas stuff, but for the modeling value of the Christmas stuff.
Yes.
Like
that's a good idea.
Like the Halloween trees that look so bad that make great armatures.
Yeah, good. That's a good idea. Thank you.
And if you don't find a bell at a Christmas supply store, it seemed to me that Campbell Models made a nice bell with a crank on it. I think they used to be up in Oregon, I thought.
So there were two questions kind of in the chat that one was if you had a career in electronics, and then two, how did you learn about the computerization technology? So kind of go together, I think, as questions.
My career, I'm an electrical engineer. I started an electronic company 50 years ago now. It's been a while. we made electronic safety equipment. My son's running it now. And it was the other question was on
the electronics, on the computer electronics. How did you kind of learn about that?
Yeah, I'm not a programmer at all. I had a programmer on my staff, but I'm not trained in programming, and so it's all quite new to me. So in fact, I told Phil I've never met another model railroader. Phil's the first person I've ever talked to that was a model railroader. So I'm quite new to everything. But I looked at some of the magazines and books, and it talked about computer control, and I thought, gee, it seemed like a good way to operate the railroad. So I got a computer program, and then I've had to struggle with learning how to program it. But I found it was fairly straightforward. I had to stumble and fall a few times, but there's a chat room that goes with the program, so there's people that can help you, and it's very nice because you get a layout. You can put your layout on there, and you can control all the different events, the noise and the sounds and the lights and so forth, and have them all timed or operated. And yet you can still operate it all manually if you choose to.
Cool. Any other questions, comments?
Fred, the NMRA has what's called the Golden Spike Award, which I think you would qualify for. It's for constructing a layout, and there's certain sets of criteria. So that's something we can look at offline. But from what I see, you're well in the 90 percentile of the way there.
Oh, thank you. I'll look into that. I'm not aware of it. Thank you.
Yeah, Fred, I'm not surprised you had never talked to another model railroader. We only come out at certain times of the day, at the same time every day. So welcome to the fold. You'll find a really bunch of fantastic people in this hobby. And
oh, sure.
You have demonstrated that the depth of the hobby is just endless, so, and you have embraced, 99% of it. So
good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Are you controlling servos through the computer system?
Yeah, I use I use a little servo control board to operate on the servo control board. You can program the servo to operate whatever speed you want and turn it off and on and make it do whatever you want it to do. And then I operate the servo control board with the computer. So all the computer is doing is telling the servo control board to turn off or on. I just prepared an article on servo controls because I found they weren't being used very much in model railroading, and they're wonderful little devices. And I sent a article into model railroading. I don't know if they're going to print it or not, but I sent it into them. But it's if anyone's interested in that, I'm very happy to share it with you.
I think it sounds like a great future event. We'll talk for some point in the future on a Saturday to have a quick little mini clinic on that. I think that's something everybody would probably enjoy learning about.
Oh, good.
Super. No, great place to exchange information. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
What was the program you used on your computer?
It's let me get it right here. Or as soon as you ask me the question, my mind goes blank here. But let me grab it for you here. Oh, come on.
Is it just the regular JMRI?
No, it is. No, it's not.
Oh,
I looked at that
okay.
one. That apparently is created by a number of individuals.
It's an open source.
And yeah, it's an open source thing. And I looked at that. I looked there seem to be several available. Where is the name of the thing? I'm sorry. Oh, it's CTI.
Thank you.
And I found it. They have a program that you can buy the whole system with 2 of the modules for under $100. So the additional modules, you know, you add on to that, but you can get a starter package for around $100. And I found it very easy to use and very well supported.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you, Fred. That was both inspirational and really cool. So thank you for taking the time to come and talk about it.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thanks. So with that, we'll just move on to kind of any modeling or information or exchanges. Anyone doing anything fun and interesting? Other than Bob who's clamping stuff in the background.
Can you hear me, Phil?
Yes, Jonathan.
Okay, I'm on a different headset because my wireless died. So I don't have anything to visually show. I can hopefully do it next time, but I'm on the whole servo topic. I've built some custom PC boards to drive a servo switch machine, and I'm doing a 3D printer or a 3D layout to hold the actual servos.
Oh, maybe we could combine you and Fred together to talk about servos. That'd be a great probably session to do.
Yeah, I got my first set of PC boards back, and I made a few wiring oopses, so I'm relaying the boards out, and I'll get the new ones made up.
Cool.
But I've got the software almost completely done too for it, so I'm just using a little microcontroller to actually control the servo. And so it's a little board that can be DCC controlled for switches, but it also has front panel buttons. So if you want to like walk up to the switch and push the button, it actually slow motion moves the switch.
Hey, Jonathan, where are you having the printed circuit boards fabricated?
What is J something, some Chinese company. And so it takes about a week and a half, and the boards cost about 50 cents each.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think that'd be a great, shoot for maybe in 2 to 4 weeks. Maybe have you and Fred together talk a little bit about servos, and that'd be great. And then talk a little bit about, the circuit boards. I think those are always of interest.
Sure.
I know Seth has been doing that as well. He did a clinic on actually the circuit design software back a while. That's another one that would be interesting. It seems more and more that we're finding that there are little circuit boards required for things in certain situations.
Yeah, for me, what motivated me is, my background is programming and whatnot. I used to, when I was much younger, do model RC airplanes, and I had a boatload of servos, and I'm building a layout, and I didn't like any of the products on the market, so I decided, well, I've got the servos, let's throw something together.
Cool.
Awesome. So, Phil, I'd like to share what I've been working on. Let's see. So can you see me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm doing basically a 12-foot long model of Occidental of the North Pacific Coast Railway. The track plan basically looks like this. It's sort of a shrunk down version of the 1900 Occidental track plan. Boone Morrison did this in the 80s and 90s. I've decided to compress it less because I actually like the space between the buildings. It makes it look more old-fashioned to me. So I just finished the bench work. I have a 2x6 module and a like a 3x6 module. I put them up on legs day before yesterday. I just started putting foam on the 2x6. I didn't really spread it out carefully when I did the 3x6, and it didn't sit evenly, which is fine because it's narrow gauge and the ground isn't even anyway. But I'm trying to do uneven ground on purpose, not by accident. And so I spent like half an hour while I was watching the phenomenal presentation, inspiring presentation, spreading out the Gorilla Glue stuff, and it made it completely obvious to me why I couldn't just take the panel and just sort of smoosh it down, because it took me a half an hour to get a 2x2 area smooth and ready for me to put something down and clamp on it. So at every step I do this, I'm making mistakes and learning stuff and stopping. I had the legs on the 3x6 module at the 2-foot width because that's where the main rail is. But because of trigonometry and the 48-inch tall module height, it makes it unstable. And so I ended up spending a couple of days relocating the legs on the 3x6 to the outer edge. So I'm planning on getting the rest of this stuff glued down this morning, and then tomorrow I'm going to chalk line the top and start putting road bed down.
The foam on it.
So that's what I'm up to.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boone's layout. I had the pleasure years ago of actually being in Hawaii, and I spent a very pleasant day with Boone and saw that Occidental. It was amazing to me, his modeling skills.
Right, and I think that so many of the things that he worked, so I got the narrow gauge and short line Gazette DVD collection loaded on my laptop, and there are like 10 good articles on Occidental, and he went through painstaking effort to create the columns for some of the Victorian things. And these are things where I'm looking at where these are going to 3D print really easy. So there are things where I can look at that he worked really hard on, and I can be inspired by his effort and go, wow, I could do railings and a lot of that Victorian stuff really easy with 3D printing. So one of the things I'm going to do with this is only wide enough for the track. I'm going to model about 15 inches of town on the right side of the module as a sidecar. So I decided that the buildings in the town would be fragile, the modules would get too wide. So if I put the city as a separate module that just has one block of town over here and the street in the back, because the most interesting thing about the hotel is the livery in the back. To me, they're really interesting things about old towns that you don't see, because if there are horses all in front, there are liveries in back. And so I'm really happy you can get printed horses all over the place, nice horses, because 1900, the cities full of horses, there are no cars or anything like that. So I'm just sort of excited I'm inspired by what Boone did, and I'm really happy. I use this and the CCCON 30 meeting every week is when I work on my trains. So, I listen to you guys, I get inspired, and I'm going to listen to you a little bit more and spread glue for another panel.
If you get a chance, there's a marvelous set of CDs that was put out by the Northwestern Pacific Group that contains a huge amount of photographic and other information on the whole North Pacific coast and the route and the eventual history of it.
Okay, well, I can take a note about that.
Hey, by the way, Bob, in case you don't remember, don't put the glue in your hair. So
hey, I changed. I was in I knew I was going to be showing stuff. So I was in actually a nice t-shirt, and I'm like, man, I'm gluing. I'm not going to mess up my nice t-shirt. So I changed into a crappy white t-shirt, because gluing isn't for shirts you want to keep.
So speaking about making things for Victorian, As I told you guys last week, there's this thing on, it's actually at 4 o'clock this afternoon called New Tracks Modeling. And they're doing a build along with the Bar Mills has a thing called the One Kit, which is basically a series of panels with etched on the back. They've laser etched cuts where you can cut for windows at 32-inch, basically positions across the back of the panels. Actually, I don't think I've got them here. I'll grab one so you can see what it is. So this is, hang on, I got to turn off my background. This is the problem with Zoom. So can you see the background on that? You can see that it's laser etched with lines on it. So it's clapboard siding, but it's got that on the back. So it's pre-etched, and then they come with a bunch of windows that are all sized basically for the same size openings. So basically, let me show you what I'm doing. I decided I wanted to pick a building, and it's an O scale that was interesting for local. So this is the building that I picked to do. This is actually in Boulder Creek. And it was actually built in 1897. It's called the Commercial Hotel. And it existed till 53 when it was torn down to build a supermarket, kind of a modern jingle there. So basically what I've done, I won't go through this and take the time, but use the Sanborn maps to get the size and have a footprint. So basically building this. And the challenge is, the details in this. So essentially and I'm going to stop sharing now because I can go back this way and show you. So essentially it's creating those things. So like this is that railing that you saw actually printed in, 3D printed. The balcony that goes around, this is a complete balcony, and there's another just like this that's the lower level steps, and I'm doing the roof the same way. So it's basically all 3D printed. So when you look underneath it, from the outside, it actually matches what's in the photos. And then the front of the building, if I share this again, because it's easier to see this and understand how it fits. This comes back to your comment about the Victorian. If you look on the front of the building here, it's got this kind of detail. And so again, the idea that you can print that detail, and this is, if you notice, it's inset here. So when I get the roof material inlaid there, and this will be actually attached to the roof and lift off with the roof. And then finally, of course, you got to have piers. So these are kind of rows of piers spaced to be able to go under the deck. So it's kind of amazing when you get down to it, how much you can really do with this stuff now and make some interesting kits.
Phil, do you put wooden siding over the top of the porch or to cover the porch?
Yeah, so on the top, I'm probably not going to use wooden siding because it's kind of, you could either use wood. I haven't really decided. It can be single boards because the pieces there, I don't have one. I didn't bring one. I'll have to go downstairs and get one. But basically, hang on, let me reshare this because I'll show you what I'm replicating. If you look here at the roof, you can see basically I'm printing this piece that looks just like this, and they're designed so they join together, kind of at these intermediate pieces, and then they have the, cast in, they are printed in these cross pieces. So I've got to figure out what to put on top of that, whether it could be single boards. I was thinking about just doing it as one buys, or it could be the other, probably easier way to do it would just be to do it with styrene and glue it on with styrene.
Yeah.
A thin piece of styrene. But anyway, I haven't quite decided. I tend to let those kind of decisions just percolate until the right decision comes to you. Sometimes you don't do what you thought you would have done originally if you just don't think about it. Think about it for a while and push it off. But anyway, I'm a little bit different than Fred. Fred seems to just stay busy, just being busy. I work best if I've got kind of a deadline coming. So having something where you've got to get it done over a period of time gets me more motivated.
Hey, Phil, I know you've said this before. I forget the answer. What software are you using to draw those up?
I just use FreeCAD.
Cricut, that's right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And the only downside I've found, it's hard to create. I haven't found out a good way to create objects and move them around between things. But once you kind of got the methodology, it's pretty quick. But I think you do the same thing with Tinkercad pretty easily. So, oh, well, I'll throw it back. Anybody else?
Dave Gibbons here. Does anybody hear me?
Yes, Dave.
Hi, guys. I have been advised by the family here that I should stop doing all the handyman stuff for a bit and go do model railroading. The bench work is up in the garage. It's painted. The lines are all drawn for where the track's going to go. The templates are printed out for where I'm going to use the Fast Track system to manufacture number 6s and number 5s. So this afternoon, I'm going to fire up my hot glue gun and lay down the cork that goes on the 2 main lines that pass through the switching area. What I'm going to do that's perhaps a little bit different, I'm going to use the 2 main lines as staging. That is, there can be a couple trains on the main, which by the way is going to be full CTC, because my future layout, the dream layout, I'm going to have CTC. So I'm going to try CTC. I have CMRI cards. I'm going to use JMRI. Actually have an interlocking and everything so that I can learn how that all works. But the idea is that a couple of mainline trains are sitting there. They come in, set out some cars, pick up some cars, come back out, and then what do you call it, where you just by hand fiddle them into from northbound to southbound, and just so that's my staging. Cars come in and out, and then the switching area. I have an industrial switcher to sit there and deliver cars and everything else. I want to reinforce what gentleman who's merrily gluing right now, putting down his glue, said about spreading out the buildings. I myself just don't like it when you look at a switching layout or a layout and it's just a mass of track and switches. So I'm only going to have on this 30-inch by 16-foot long switching layout, I'm only going to have 13 turnouts total, with 4 of those being the 2 crossovers on the interlocking on the main line. So a more open look, more room to put parking for vehicles, so on and so forth. But I'm going to go and start putting down cork when I'm done talking to you mugs and start model railroading.
I have a question for you, David. Have you ever used hot glue to put cork down before?
Yeah, years ago. What I remember is you take your time, use very small amounts, and you go bit by bit so it doesn't get hard and lift and make the cork bumpy. I've done it before, and it's just a patient sort of thing of doing that. But rather than use double-sided tape or glue or nails, that's what I'm going to try today. If it doesn't come out right, I scrape it off and try again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought about using that the first time I built my Pink Lady, but I was doing it on foam, and the hot glue would kind of destroy the foam. So,
well, I don't know. I've been at this long enough. The foam just seems too newfangled to me. Sorry. Partly because I had decades of experience working in modular clubs and leading modular clubs, and you can depend on plywood, and these 2 sections, 8 by 30 sections, I know in the fullness of time we're going to finish taking care of a relative here and we'll move, and so I know that stuff will hold up better. That's my thought process.
I'm not using a lot of pink foam this time. So
the other thing that I think works pretty well is the liquid nails. Either that, or the liquid nails has worked pretty well for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would swear by liquid nails.
Yeah, for that, the between the wood and the cork, and you can spread it really easily. I made a little spreader up when I did the track. Basically, take a little piece of plastic and cut little jig teeth, or you can buy one at the store and you can use that to spread.
Right.
And you get a nice little, and then you can just squish it down. And keeps it very thin and level.
Yeah, if the hot glue turns out to be, I'll try today, and if it argues with me, then I'll switch to, I think the generic term people use is just construction adhesive.
Yeah. Right.
Has anybody tried contact cement, like when you laminate, Formica on a counter? I've done sort of woodworking projects. I use contact cement for laminating that, and I love it from the standpoint you paint both sides. It's like water. Sets up for about 15 minutes, and then you contact together, and it's like stuck. The only problem is it's like a permanent bond. But has anybody tried that for?
Well, we have a pro level woodworker here.
I was going to say I wouldn't use contact cement because you lay it down and it's there. You're not going to move it again.
Right.
The
Okay.
construction adhesive, you can still jiggle things around and move them into position.
Okay.
The other thing, by the way, if you use construction adhesive or that, you need to buy at least 1 or 2 of those push pin boxes at Michael's. Lots of push pins.
To
hold everything in place while it dries.
What's wrong with just using wood glue on plywood? I use wood glue.
Takes so
on
long to
plywood.
dry.
Pardon?
To cure. Takes so long to cure.
I just tape it down with green tape. It seems to work fine.
All these years that I've been doing stuff, I've been using contact cement, and I'm also sort of an anti-foamer. So I've used a half-inch plywood. Yeah, I use half-inch plywood and then cork road bed. So I glue the cork to the plywood with contact cement. Now I also do the same thing with the flex track and the components, and put contact cement on the top and bottom. Part of the reason for that is back in the day, I had some problems after you try to go back and do your ballasting with a water soluble water solution. And if you've used like, for instance, wood glue or matte medium or something, I had some problems with that soaking in and then loosening what I had done previously. So yeah, I'm a believer in contact cement.
I've used contact cement, but mostly when I'm upside down trying to put things underneath the layout or some kind of strange construction system, because there's no way to clamp it well or etc. But you're right, down is down with the contact cement.
Not quite. Contact cement is very useful if you're gluing your railroad ties to your track board, because with contact cement, and you have a material that will conduct heat somewhat readily, you can touch it with a warm iron, it will soften, and you can actually move a small part into a better position. I use that method when I'm doing fast track turnouts.
I've had a couple of times where I had to go back at a later date and remove some track or rearrange it or stuff. And yeah, it is tricky to get contact cement up cleanly. But what I found was using a serrated steak knife and just kind of sawing along underneath first the track and then the road bed to clean that all off, and then sand it down and rebuild as you need to. Another thing I have is one tool that I use is a roller. And so when you put down the cork road bed, then you roll this, and that gets it real nice and flat. And if you need to, you can touch it up with a sanding block to get it before you put the track down.
Hey, James Ekman was holding something up there. I was curious what that was.
Track I laid with contact cement. So basically it's like I put the ties down and actually glued the rail down with contact cement. And this is actually some HON3 stuff that I did back 25 some odd years ago. And I mean, it's still as solid as the day I put it on there. So I mean,
that was another technique I used back then too. Was back in the 70s, we were starting with hand laying code 55 rail. So I would glue the ties down like you did, and then with what was called plyo bond, it was pretty much like a contact cement. Put that on the bottom of the rail, and then just go along and heat it, and that would make it bond to the ties. And then I just use like a metal block as a heat sink behind the soldering iron as you went down. I've got some of that track work that's still in place after 40 years.
Yeah, so it's contact cement and plyo bond are both technologies that are well tried and true for track laying if you need to use them.
I think Central Valley was a big proponent of using contact cement for their laying
Paul
that track.
Mallory also, I think.
Hmm?
Paul Mallory, the track workbook.
One thing I've learned in the years that I worked with many different types of modelers in the club setting is that different techniques work for different people too. That is, you just get, either you get used to it or your particular speed or style of working, a method will work for you. The only thing I had a problem with is there were a couple of guys in the clubs who were true craftsmen, and they would recommend methods that were fiendishly difficult to do. The results were tremendous, but when other people tried them, that was a formula for disaster.
Because you have to learn what you're doing. I was going to say,
No, none of that.
yeah, the adhesive part is that I tried Loctite on plywood for a staging area, and the Loctite, you spread it out and you put it on there and it pretty much holds your track where you want to put it. The biggest flaw I did is I did a center line, and I should have done a left and a right line. And you got about 20 minutes to move it around. So I may try it again with cork, but I don't think I'll use it again with track. So directly on plywood.
You guys made my hair stand on end. I've been using regular glue to put wood glue between the cork road bed and the track, and it seems to work fine. Holds the track down fine. If I need to move it, I just take a knife and slice under it. But you're telling me that if I wet this for the ballast, that's all going to become unglued?
No,
Depends on the wood glue.
No, it is not.
Now, that's not necessarily true. I've just had some problems a couple of times when I tried it originally with a matte medium thing. And then I went back and soaked the ballast, with the alcohol and then the solution to hold it in place. And I had some spots where it loosened up. But
yikes.
That's not general. Yeah.
Yeah. I used all glue on my last railroad. I used it under the cork. I used it on top of foam. I used glue when I put the ballast on, a very diluted solution, and it worked fine. And then when I tore it up, I saved quite a bit of track. So.
Yeah, I like that I can just take a knife or kitchen knife and scrape between the cork road bed and the track if I want to move it and make little changes.
Yeah. I'd actually use a paint scraper, a flexible paint scraper, because then you can, I don't use nails in it. So.
Yeah. You had me worried.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now there's many different ways to do this stuff. So.
There's no wrong way.
I'll open up a topic. I was doing some wiring the other night, which we all know that pictures of wiring is just really exciting. One terminal strip looks just like the other. I've started using, I think they're called spades, the little fork guys. Some of you guys are laughing. If you know me, you're thinking, man, Radke's ready for an EE degree. Other people are going, what? He's still using spades on these things? What about suitcase connectors? But I had the layout on, and I was hooking things up diligently, watching every time I hook something up to see if you got that dreaded blinking red light. And I got complacent, and I hooked up about 5 or 6 things, and happened to notice there was something blinking out of the side, my side vision. Went over there, and I guess I'm thinking the part I want to open up is nicknames for parts of the railroad. I've fixed 3 shorts so far on my wiring and the staging, and it's always been this one switch. So the name of that switch is now Shorty. It will never have a number or a location. So, I'm thinking how, nicknames of railroads or places on railroads. Anybody have any interesting ones,
Dysfunction Junction.
Derail area,
Hey, I've got a question about, I'm sorry, I left for a minute. I hope I'm not interrupting you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I got a question. I've been having problems getting electricity to the frogs on my Atlas code 55 track. And I just found some stuff called SureHold. This is a glue that can pass electricity. Does anybody use that? I was thinking of gluing the wire to the frogs because the solder won't take.
Can you hold that up again a little more towards the center?
called Sure Glue. And it's, you just, I tried it on a test track. I just took a piece of track and a piece of wire and glued them together. It takes a while for it to set. I haven't figured out how long. The one that I did, I let set overnight, but it glues it just real hard onto the track and it passes electricity fine.
Cool.
Nobody's tried that, huh?
I have not. On my Atlas switches, I always drilled a little hole in the thing there and threaded it, and then put a little brass screw on the bottom. So
How about that little on the side of the turnout? There's a little thing that looks like you're supposed to attach wire to it to power the frog. And I tried it once or twice, and it didn't power it. So am I using? Is that not what it's for?
That's what it's for. The problem is sometimes with the Atlas stuff, they will spot weld parts together. And if the spot weld fails, especially if it's an older turnout, then you will no longer have a connection.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I've been having continual problems with the Atlas turnouts. They're not constructed very well, in my opinion. The cars bounce over them, and
that's why they're so inexpensive.
That's Atlas N scale, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and did you tap that little thing and then put a screw in it, or are you trying to attach the wire directly to it?
I tried to solder the wire directly to it.
Yeah, usually whenever I've done that with mine, I learned the hard way is you heat that frog up and it starts to melt the plastic insulation around it. So you have to tap it. You have to get a little tap that gives threads to it and then put a brass screw on it and attach your wire to the brass screw. So,
Well, maybe this electrical glue might work instead.
yeah, I was thinking that's a good solution.
Yeah, I'm going to try that too. I just didn't know if it was going to last long term, but made a nice tight connection.
Yeah, it was really exciting for me when I was trying my first one. When I heated it up with the soldering iron and I nudged it and I noticed it kind of went left.
Great.
And that's when I learned how to cut a switch out of the railroad and put a new one in.
Actually, I could see a lot of the feeder soldering and so forth that we do. Something like the glue would be make it a much easier task because you don't have to worry about bringing the soldering iron over. And I know my little portable one, the batteries went out on it, and I can't seem to get it to take a charge anymore. So that was my cordless one. But now I have to bring the corded soldering iron over to the layout and wire. And I gets a little heated words to go with it.
Yeah, you know that I always say that damn cord, it catches on everything. So
I also bought this stuff because I was trying to solder LEDs to, so I could light my panels showing where the turnout was turned. And I burned out a couple LEDs doing it because I'm not a very good solderer. So I'm going to try gluing those things together too.
Small heat sinks can help a lot to protect LEDs when you're soldering. You clip, you can get little bitty aluminum ones. You clip them just in between where you're going to solder and the leg of the LED. You'll have much better luck with that.
Where do you get such things?
Oh dear.
Fries is gone.
Fries is gone. Just look under. Just get online, search for heat sink. And heat sink for soldering, and you'll be able to find some.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Gentlemen, I'm going to inflict a little bit of nostalgia on you. Can everybody see it?
Nope.
No.
There?
Your
book?
video's not on.
No, just your name.
Your video's not on, or are you sharing your screen?
Oh, let's see. Let's try this.
Hey, John, before David gets in there, I'll be even more brave. I'll say, hey, John, see Fred? Fred, see John? I bet Fred knows how to put those wires on the LEDs,
So actually there's a guy I don't think about it, I remember his name, on that new tracks, who's done a whole series on automation and LEDs. And he went through how to solder leads onto 6020 LEDs,
Yeah.
which are the micro ones. You stick them on a piece of tape to keep them where you can actually keep them from moving around while you solder on them. You know, soldering
Temperature.
basically magnet wire to something that's, I don't know, maybe, you know, a few 100,000ths of an inch, maybe 80,000ths of an inch wide.
Yeah.
The temperature controlled soldering irons help a lot. Here you go, gentlemen. Nostalgia. The 1951 AC Calmback edition of Track
Wow.
and Layout. I inherited this from an old model railroading friend, but when you guys were talking about sticking down track and cork, here's early days right here.
Cool.
Did they mention rubber cement in there and ventilate the room? And
Back then it was probably more that you rendered down the horse's hooves and stuff to make your glue.
On the conductivity problem, Al Malik left the meeting for another Zoom meeting, but I called him and he has used a solder paste, liquid solder paste that was very effective in that kind of problem with Atlas switches. And he got it on eBay. He said.
Yeah, I tried the solder paste, didn't work. Dried out within 3 months.
Mm.
Do you heat the solder tape up, or do you just stick it on and hope?
No, solder paste. I thought he said.
Paste.
Oh, well. Solder tape.
I was like, boy, that would be a nice invention. Get going, guys.
Solder paste is just solder, ground solder with
flux.
The flux in it. So you do have to heat it.
No.
Well, yeah, I think the problem with solder paste is you still have to heat it enough. You have to heat the metal enough to get it to flow, to get that attachment to the metal, even though it's paste. Because it's the heat level of the metal that's
To
the
rail,
challenge.
it was a hard it just never got hot enough.
Resistant soldering is another way to go for those that are familiar with that method.
Very expensive.
That would actually probably be.
That's true.
But that would be interesting if you knew someone who had a resistant soldering system, is to take one of those N-scale switches over and see if you could get that soldered with resistance. Because that may actually be something you could solder with resistant soldering. Because you could clip on either side of it and just hit it right there, and you really would keep the heat in one place. And you could put just a lead on all of them on the workbench before you even put them on the layout.
What is resistance soldering?
So instead of heating something and that's a tip that's hot and putting it on there, you clip to either side of it and the resistance gets heated where you've got two parts that aren't touching very well. So you get the heat actually at the point of the joint. In other words, the heat is actually generated by the gap in the materials that you flow into.
The thing here is that most materials we work with have resistance, so you flow a heavy current through them. You'll either have like a tweezers and you grab the item, or you'll have a ground connection on one side of it, and then you'll touch usually like a carbon tip, a small carbon tip, where the electricity flows through the material. You heat right there only, and that can provide a very efficient way of soldering, but it's still, you need technique to do it. I have a resisting soldering setup. I'm in Hayward. If you want to private message me, we can try tinkering with that.
Thank you for the info.
You're welcome. It's interesting you named Unger, sir. That's the name of a company that made soldering equipment for years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got no relatives out here. I'm from Pennsylvania, and my layout's going to be Pennsylvania based.
Excellent.
This is my first try at it, by the way. So I'm stumbling along.
First tries never work out. So.
Oh boy.
You just plan on it.
I've taken a whole room. I started one side and I've already expanded it 50%. I'm in my whole room now.
What is,
John,
That's
let's
why I'm
not-
doing a first try 100 times over.
Yeah. One of the mottos is, learn by your mistakes and try not to make the same mistakes over and over.
Hey,
Just don't do the same
let's not
thing
wear out
twice.
that I'm a beginner thing, that I got a patent on that. Or copyright or something.
Yeah, I was going to ask, since we're talking about soldering, anybody have any good leads on getting some really good solder, or what kind of a combination we should have? I think it's like 43, 57 or something like that.
Are you tolerant of having lead in your solder still, or are you wanting to go to lead-free solders?
I want solder that works.
SN 6040.
I'm sorry, say that again.
SN 6040 rosin core. You get the thickness of solder to match the work that you're doing. Let's see here. Hang on one moment.
Just as a note, the SN is tin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was looking at it, and I'm sure a couple different percentage points makes a difference.
No, but that's 60-40 is the classic rosin.
Yeah, that's the basic one, Jim.
Yeah.
Jim, the next time I come over, I'll bring an assortment.
Oh, I just ordered a 5-pack, and it seems to be working out. But I had a package before that was not near as good.
I'd say.
What thickness were your?
Oh, it's very thin. It's it's point something. I don't know. I don't have it on me right now, so it's out there.
I'm putting up a roll of Urson 6040 multi-core. This
Yeah.
is really good for hand soldering, but ERSIN. Another one is Alpha Metals. Right, Alpha Metals is another one. Then Kester, Kester. These are items that you can find. They're disappearing from the commercial market because of the lead content. But in the aftermarket, like on eBay and stuff, you'll see people still selling this stuff. You have various thicknesses, of course. I managed to score and stash. Oh, there, somebody's bringing up some.
Yeah.
But I would stay with the name brands. Stuff coming out of China, I would not put a lot of money into, maybe a little bit to try to see if it works. But
yeah, so this was Amazon. I just did solder SN 6040. So this is the Kester.
Yes, good stuff.
And this is the multi-core you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, multi-core is a feature. Urson brand, the quality of the rosin and the Urson was noticeably better. I was a technician for 50 years and did more soldering than I care to remember at this point. But Kester is Alpha, Urson. Those are ones I can recommend unconditionally. You just want to get the thickness right, because you'll see solder that can be, almost 1/8 of an inch thick down to hair fine, and it depends on what you're doing. If you're soldering those super small LED surface mount LED chips, stick them down the tape, but you're going to have hair fine solder to do the soldering, and a temperature controlled soldering iron is a necessity when you're doing surface mount stuff. You can do heat sinks, I'm sorry here, I'm sort of taking things over. I'll shut up.
No, David, what you're talking yourself into is sending me an email and doing a soldering clinic in about 2 weeks. No, I mean,
yes.
I'm serious.
Okay, I'm game.
So, I was thinking about this actually when you were talking. So like in almost everything, there's kind of 2 levels of both technique and tools. There's kind of what I'll call the normal level that most of us are at. So if you think about soldering, that's the regular soldering iron versus the technique with resistant soldering. I was thinking about the same thing with sanding. You have the sanding block, or you go by the Unimate or whatever it is, the sander that's, incredibly precision. Same thing with saws. I mean, so it's kind of interesting with soldering. it's really good to understand what the next level is, to understand if that's where you want to invest your skills and your money and time in that specific area. So like learning how to do much better soldering, I think it'd be a great clinic.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I actually have I have a write-up I did for the club members some years ago. I can see if I can dig that out, but I can the thing is, what I don't have is a video camera other than what's here in the computer. Maybe the iPad camera would work.
You actually have a phone?
No, I do not.
You don't have okay. Yeah, iPad. An iPad has a great camera, but iPhone, iPhone or Androids, the cameras now are great.
All right.
They're actually it turns out the newest. If you get into the more late generations of those devices, the cameras in them are probably almost better than anything else you can buy.
Right.
Taking the kind of pictures we like.
Well, can you and I communicate offline about
David, just
putting
send me an
something together?
email. I'll throw my email in the chat. So
okay, I'm ready to scribble here.
Phil, since you're talking ideas of clinics, another one that I would love to see is how to do video cameras.
Oh, on the train?
Yeah, I mean, how to, what is a decent video camera to set up for like a staging area or something? And, I'm sure there's people out there that want to know too, There's some of us that know everything and, certain things about electronics or something. And then there's the guys like me that know nothing. So
I'd love to find one that I can mount a tiny camera lens or something just across from the layout, because I can't get to the back side. It's against a wall, but I want to be able to see across the layout from that side, particularly for switching operations and some of the scenery I'd be able to do. You'll never see if you don't.
Well, I mean, I've seen guys use backup cameras for certain places and very creative where, it flips down and you can see it. But unless you're willing to deal with that, you got a big learning curve, and it would be nice to reduce that learning curve a little bit.
So one of the guys one of the younger guys at the Pleasanton Club actually bought, I think they're $100, maybe 150 on eBay, the cheap Chinese 4-camera security systems, and the cables are just Cat 5s that run from the base to the camera, and the output goes to a TV, and it gives you 4 cameras on the TV screen.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to have a few locations where you want to have a camera, that's a pretty cheap way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, things like that, different options, different ideas. We don't need a home security system to see what train's on track 2,
But home security systems getting cheap these days. The type of technology, though, is and adapting it to what our needs is sort of interesting.
I keep looking at Costco saying, here's an 8-camera set you can buy, and I'm like, I don't need the housings,
Right.
But will it do a 1080p picture of a?
Yeah, you can read the numbers off that, baby.
Well, that's kind of why the cheap ones actually are okay, because most of the time what you're trying to see is there a train moving through the area? You're not really looking for photographic level detail. The other thing is, if anyone has had any experience with it, I think we're getting very close to this time frame of adding a camera into your locomotive, into your engines. You kind of combine the proto throttle and that experience of operating with a proto throttle with the screen. You can actually have this whole concept of abstracting the engineer from the physical train room, because now you have the same experience as an engineer. You're actually seeing on the screen what the train's experience, et cetera. So it'd be really interesting if anybody's played with that, have that as a conversation about getting cameras into engines.
Two-edged sword, sir, because then you have to start to do a better job of scenery.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things.
Think about this with Wi-Fi, controlled dead rail locomotives. You need an engineer's view.
Right. So we actually in Pleasanton, we've set up. I've got what's called a GoPro session, and it's a little cube. It doesn't have a screen, but it's a GoPro. They have an app that runs Wi-Fi to an application that I run in an iPad. and I put the iPad up behind the glass, and what you actually see is the engine level view. And it does, by the way, have an interesting thing about the scenery, but it's a really interesting opportunity, though, when we talk to the public, because most people come in have no concept of scale trains. And so you have this great opportunity where the train goes by, and it's going probably about a scale 45, 50 miles an hour. So if you think about it, it's going, about this speed. And then on the screen, you actually see the view, which really looks like 45 to 50 miles an hour. And so there's this very interesting conversation you have with someone about, how your brain interprets what it sees. Because when you look at that screen, your brain interprets it the way you've ever seen anything moving, which is things come at you fast, therefore you're a moving thing. But when you look at it, it's actually going very slow. So the scale actually fools your brain.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the definition of how magicians and politicians fool you.
We had John Cushman, who is a professional videographer, and he worked with Garden Railways magazine. He came out to my layout in El Cerrito, and he did a GoPro on a locomotive, and he made a 5-minute video, which went to the National Garden Railways magazine, and it's on my band's website, and you can see it if you want to. It's under freshpickedband.com, and then you go to trains, and it's free. So fresh, F-R-E-S-H, picked, P-I-C-K-E-D, band, BAND.com. And that's with a GoPro on a special locomotive that he rigged up. I have a G-scale 200 feet of stainless steel track in El Cerrito.
Basically, a GoPro will easily fit on a G-scale flatbed car. So I don't know what you do if you're doing N-scale. On an N-scale, the GoPro is bigger than the entire locomotive. So I don't know what you do about that.
When you get down to N-scale, or if you actually want to put a camera in an engine, the drone cameras are really interesting. They're very high quality, and they're small, and they have, it's under gigahertz transmission modules. So you can actually transmit from an engine to a screen.
Tomix in Japan has an N-scale system now too. Unfortunately, it's not very good in terms of resolution or anything, but they are starting to work with it.
You can mount a small cube camera on a flat car and push it ahead of the engine. That way you're getting the sound of the locomotive. You can't, of course, you're not looking through the locomotive window or anything, but it certainly will.
We have actually a number of those from the CCC, the ON30 up on YouTube, where we've done that with little cube cameras on a flat car. It does make your modeling, it does make you focus on your modeling a lot more.
Yeah.
And what is a cube camera?
There are a bunch of little cube like action cameras. Like if you look for GoPro Session, it's basically, they don't have a screen, so therefore they're just the size of kind of the battery, and there are some smaller ones that are just kind of brands that people make.
Right now I'm using mirrors. I had a bathroom cabinet that disintegrated on me, but I took the mirror doors and put them along the back of the layout.
The club in Napa, California for years with their layout just had mirrors. Mirrors are incredibly high resolution. They're on all the time, and they're cheap.
I got to go. Thank you all for the help. This is very elucidating. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Enjoy.
Yeah, I have.
Keep modeling, John.
Thank you.
Wonderful session, by the way, today.
Yeah.
I had an item to add. I'm sorry, I had to duck away from the meeting for another meeting, but there was some discussion about the use, about soldering wire to track without using heat. I have some information that might be helpful. This company here, it's AP Wire Solder. Let's see if we can see that. Comes in a little tiny container because you don't use much of this. It is a black, looks like a lot of carbon in it, obviously. That's would be the conductor. And you mix it up and it makes kind of a pasty material. If you use like an alligator clip to clamp a little bit of stripped wire to the inside of the rail, right along the web of the rail, and use this glue to hold, to glue that wire to the rail, let it dry overnight, and you've got an electrical connection that's very good and it's very strong. It takes quite a bit of effort to pry that wire loose from the rail once that glue has set up. I overpaint the joint with cyanoacrylate glue. I let it dry for a couple of days before I do that, and that makes a very hard, permanent, electrically conductive joint. And you don't have to use heat, and the only thing you have to polish that rail with a little wire brush on a Dremel tool, which is what I use, and you get the rail web really shiny and clean, and this stuff will do the job.
Phil, I just want to say that today we've had a type of session that I don't want to lose if we have to go back to in-person sessions. I mean, you can't bring stuff to a meeting room like the Elks Club and say, oh, I use this. You know, it's the kind of thing that we've sort of developed over this year. And I would hate to see us try to do in-person without this type of familiarity and without this type of contact.
I agree 100%.
And Ken, so that's why, Ken, you're going to get my volunteer email now for the committee. No, I'm actually serious. I think that this is why I want to get folks together, is because I agree with you 100%. The question is, if we're going to do a quarterly meeting, and let's say, you know, and I don't know how this is going to merge. Maybe we do 2 meetings a year where we have an auction. The other 2 meetings, maybe we have at different locations, spread them out a little bit. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just kind of spitballing. Then the question is, if we have those 3 months apart, what do we do in between? Do we want to have a monthly meeting in between? How often is it? You know, do we want to have, those are kind of the questions I think we need to think through as a group to we kind of change back, because I think this has become a really nice cadence for folks to keep together. I don't think we want to use that, but we may not want to do it as much when we're doing the together meetings as well. So anyway, just the great opportunity, if you have thoughts on it, to get together and spend a couple of evenings. Let's put a little plan together.
May I ask a delicate question?
Sure.
How how to put this? Is it something people feel comfortable with to have guests at their home layout where I did it this way, I did it that way, or is there a question or discomfort with having other folks over for security or safety reasons?
We have I think we've had a lot of layouts open, you know, through the years, and you know, and that's one of the things we have normally at the PCR convention, which we would have had in Concord. I think there were probably going to be 20 layouts open then, right?
Separate? No, I'm not layout tours in a convention, but rather the sort of gathering we're having today, right? Where it's just folks just come to somebody's, like, you know, I'm going to have this switching layout in the garage, and folks drop by on a Saturday afternoon or morning, and you guys look at it and go, why did you do it that way? And so on and so forth. Is that something that makes sense?
I think it's an interesting thought process. So one of the questions,
security these days is an issue.
Yeah, I think
if you don't have an invite list and an actual known persons coming by.
Yeah. So combining that potentially with, you know, our specific events, you know, where we have a quarterly event, is probably an interesting thought to have. You know, we haven't had layout tours for quite a while because we've had the auction in the afternoon. So if, you know, again, and these are all ifs, and I want to get folks who've got strong feelings to come forward, but, if we only have auctions at 2 events, then the other 2 events, we have the afternoons clear. If we do those potentially farther away. So we've kind of had Alameda and San Leandro as kind of the hubs of our physical events, it seems like, for a long time. By the way, I only have a couple of years experience on this, so feel free to correct me. If we, for example, decided to do an event in Los Gatos, or somewhere else in the area, then we could do 2 or 3 layout tours as part of that event and do exactly, David, what you're talking about. But then they can be done where we basically distribute the information and the directions and the addresses to folks who actually come to the event in the morning and then can go to the tours in the afternoon. So and that's one of the things we've, quite frankly, as a region, as a division, I think we've kind of lost, is having our own local tours, kind of because of the structure of our event. So again, that's one of the discussions for the committee to talk about as we think about, do we have different kind of events and what do we want to have in them? And I like the idea. I really do think we've got an incredible number of wonderful layouts. And, if we could have 2 or 3 layouts open and have an event somewhere in San Jose or down that way, and then see those layouts in the afternoon, that would be a great opportunity, exactly what you talked about, David, and do it in a very informal way for us as a group. And even the idea of having that, on one time and then a month later having an event and having the layout owners come in and answer questions that people thought about after they went home and thought of and decided this was really interesting. So lots of opportunities for us to think about what we want to do.
Going to say, not sure what's going on there, but I was going to say the interesting idea of that is that if we could Zoom some of these layout tours, and I'm not sure, live is the best way, but it is really nice not having to jump in the car and drive 40 minutes, to get to a meeting place, and getting there and going, oh, damn, I wish I'd brought this,
Right. Well,
but
so
on the other side, I totally miss the human interaction.
Yep.
On the flip side, I would go to one of these meets, and if Al or David or Ken was there, if I didn't know them, I may not even talk to them.
Right.
So, there's,
and I think we want to keep this going. By the way, for the NMRA convention, and this will be also for Fresno, what try to do is, rather than have people do kind of slideshows or, kind of the bouncy video, most of the layouts that will be open will have a video that has been pre-recorded of the layout.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that on the website, you won't have a clinic about the layout per se. You have the link to go watch the video, and then the clinic is going to be talking to the owner about, so there'll be some clinics that'll be like, if you went to the OPSIG, where there'll be like 4 owners on a panel talking, but then we're going to have this thing called the Great Hall, which will have breakouts. So we can have up to 100 breakouts. So the idea is, let's say, Jack Burgess has his layout there. We would have an hour in a breakout in basically the layout owner focus breakout track. So from, 12 to 1 or 1 to 2 on Tuesday, Jack would be there for an hour to discuss with anybody questions about his layout.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is to take the video of the layout and make that the thing you watch, and then have the opportunity to really interact with the owner of the layout about why they built it that way, what they did, et cetera, et cetera. Because that's really what you get when you go. It seems to me when you go to a layout, you get 2 things. You see the layout in really good detail, but then you also get the opportunity to interact with the owner about, I love this scene. Why did you do it this way? How did you do this? And so we're trying to replicate that. And by the way, any ideas anybody has on this, feel free to call Hildig, Seth, send me an email, because it really is, how do we recreate in a virtual event the real feelings and value you get in a physical event? So enough said.
Yeah. I was going to say, as another point of the virtual part, is that there's a lot more eyes on what's being presented. I did not see the guy underwater. I really wanted him to go back and show that guy underwater. It's like, so, the sets of eyes and the questions that are asked, it's like, holy cow, boy, I missed that. It's like, damn,
That's right. Well, good. Well,
I'm going to go put down some cork, lady and gentlemen.
Good luck.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll get some good hot glue burns. Everyone be well, be safe. And I've got the email here to talk about a soldering clinic.
Excellent.
Take care. Be well,
Thanks.
everyone.
I'm back to plastic.
Well, thanks everyone for coming, and we will see everyone in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Yeah.
Hi, Phil.